I probably shouldn't have been in his room. But curiosity's a hell of a thing. It was early July, and I was spending a few days at my best friend Jason's house while his parents were out of town. We'd done it every summer since we were kids, lazy days filled with gaming, junk food, and staying up until 3 a.m. watching dumb horror movies. But this summer was different, not because of Jason, but because of Adam, his older brother. Adam had been away at college for the last 2 years, so I barely saw him since he graduated. But now he was back for the summer, and let me tell you, something changed. He wasn't the lanky, awkward guy that first remembered. He was broader now, confident. The kind of guy who walks into a room and doesn't have to say anything to take up space. The first night I got there, I saw him walk into the kitchen shirtless, towel slung around his neck, hair still damp from the shower. My stomach flipped. He nodded at me like nothing had changed, like I wasn't standing there trying not to stare at the way his back muscles shifted with every step. "Yo," he said, voice lower than I remembered. "Hey," I muttered, pretending to be real interested in the bowl of cereal. One wasn't even eating. From that moment on, he was all I could think about, which made everything way more complicated, especially because Jason was clueless. Totally straight, totally chill, and totally unaware that his best friend had a thing for his older brother. Now here's the part one probably shouldn't admit. Adam's room was off limits. Not because he said so, but because Jason had made it clear that Adam liked his privacy and that we should stay out of his stuff. Fair enough. But one afternoon, Jason had gone to the store with his girlfriend, and I was left alone in the house. I was wandering upstairs to grab my charger when I passed Adam's door. It was cracked open, just enough to tempt me. I don't know what possessed me, but I stepped in. The room smelled like his cologne and something else, maybe cedarwood, or just plain masculinity. The bed was unmade. There were gym clothes tossed on a chair, a half-read book on the nightstand, and headphones tangled on the desk. I didn't touch anything, just stood there, taking it in. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, on the stairs. I froze. Door creaked open fully, and there he was. Adam, standing in the doorway, a protein bar in one hand, his brows lifting when he saw me. "Lost?" he asked, not angry, just amused. I was looking for the bathroom," I stammered, already backing toward the door. He smirked, stepping inside and closing the door behind him with a soft click. "Bathroom's been in the same place for years," he said. "Try again." I swallowed hard, caught somewhere between embarrassment and straight-up panic. But Adam didn't look mad. He just set the bar on the desk and leaned against the dresser, arms folded, eyes scanning me. "What were you looking for?" he asked, his voice low. "Nothing," I said too quickly. He didn't say anything for a long second. Then he stepped closer, slow, deliberate, until he was standing right in front of me. "You always stare at me like that?" he asked. "Or is it just when you think I'm not paying attention?" I blinked. My whole body went hot. What? He tilted his head. "I've seen it. The looks. You think I didn't notice?" My mouth went dry. There was no way out of this. I could deny it, make a joke, run for the door. But I didn't do any of those things. I just stood there, silent, watching his eyes flick down to my mouth, then back up. "You're not as subtle as you think," he added. "You're lucky I don't mind it." I stared at him, heart pounding in my throat. Then he leaned in, just enough for me to feel the heat from his body. "I don't mind it," he repeated, softer this time. And before I could say a word, before I could even breathe, Adam did something I never expected. He reached up, brushed his fingers along the side of my jaw, and whispered, "Close the door next time." Then he walked out, leaving me standing there, completely wrecked. I didn't move for a full minute after he left the room. My hands were shaking, my breath shallow, and my brain? Total static. I'd played a million fantasies in my head about Adam noticing me, touching me, saying something, anything, but this was something else. He saw me. Really saw me. And instead of laughing or brushing it off or making it weird, he left the door wide open. Figuratively. Literally, too, since I never got around to closing it. The rest of that afternoon felt like I was floating through someone else's life. Jason came back around 5, tossed a bag of chips at my head, and started talking about some sale he'd found at the gas station. I nodded, pretended to listen, all while replaying that moment in Adam's room on a loop in my head. That night, we ordered pizza, played FIFA, and stayed up way too late like always. Adam didn't show up for dinner. Jason said he was probably at the gym or passed out in his room. I pretended not to care, but every time I heard a floorboard creak upstairs, my pulse spiked like it had something to prove. Around 1 a.m., Jason finally called it and crashed on the couch. I grabbed my phone and headed to the guest room, aka Jason's brother's old room, which had become my usual spot whenever I stayed over. I brushed my teeth, turned off the light, and climbed into bed, but I knew sleep wasn't coming. Not after what happened, not with all the thoughts running laps in my head. And then, right around 2:30 a.m., there was a knock. 2 soft taps. I sat up immediately, heart racing. Another knock, followed by the door creaking open. The hallway light spilled in, and Adam's silhouette stood in the doorway. His voice was quiet. "You up?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him with that same careful click that somehow made the air shift around us. "I couldn't sleep," he said, standing near the bed. "Mind if I sit?" I nodded slowly, scooting over. He sat on the edge of the bed, facing away from me. The room was dark, quiet, except for the hum of the fan. I couldn't read his face, but the tension in the room was like static before a lightning strike. "I meant what I said earlier," he said finally. My throat was dry. "About what?" He looked over his shoulder. "About you looking at me. I wasn't teasing. I wasn't trying to." I trailed off. "I didn't say it was a bad thing." Silence. He turned more toward me, one leg folded under him now, closer. His knee almost touched mine. "You really think I didn't notice all those times you stared at me when you thought I wasn't paying attention?" he asked. "I didn't think you'd care." "I didn't. I don't," he said, and then, after a beat, "I liked it." That shut me up completely. I liked that someone looked at me like that, like they actually wanted me. Not because I'm some guy on a dating app or a notch for a weekend relationship. Just because. His voice had dropped to something quieter now, more honest. "I didn't plan to come in here," he added, "but I kept thinking about it. About you. About how you looked in my room." I swallowed. "What about it?" He leaned closer, and this time, his voice was just above a whisper. "You looked like you wanted me to touch you." I exhaled, hard, like someone knocked the air out of me. Then he reached forward. Just a little, just enough to brush his fingers against the blanket between us. "Do you want that?" he asked, eyes locked on mine now. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Adam leaned in, slow, like he was giving me time to back out. But I didn't. His hand reached up to my cheek again, warm and steady, and then his mouth was on mine. Gentle at first. Testing. But when I didn't pull away, when I kissed him back, everything shifted. It wasn't frantic. It wasn't aggressive. It was quiet and deliberate, like we were both trying to understand what this meant while our bodies had already figured it out. When we finally pulled apart, we just sat there for a second, forehead to forehead, breathing in the same small pocket of air between us. He smiled, just barely. "I'm not sorry," he whispered. "Me neither." And then he climbed into bed, pulling the blanket over both of us. We didn't talk after that. We didn't have to. We just lay there, his chest against my back, his hand on my waist. And in the silence, I felt it. The beginning of something I hadn't dared let myself hope for. Waking up in Adam's arms felt surreal. At first, I wasn't even sure I was awake. The room was dim, early morning light just beginning to filter through the blinds. I could feel his breath on the back of my neck, slow and even. His arm was still draped over my waist, his chest warm against my back. And then I remembered everything. The kiss, the weight of his hand against my skin, the way his voice had gone quiet when he said he wasn't sorry. I didn't move. Part of me wanted to stay frozen like that, to pretend that this moment could last forever. But another part, an anxious, overthinking part, was already racing ahead. What did this mean? Was this just a one-time thing? Would he regret it when he woke up? Before I could spiral any further, I felt him shift behind me. His arm tightened just slightly around my waist, like he was making sure I hadn't disappeared. Then his voice, low and raspy with sleep. "Hey!" I turned my head slightly, just enough to glance back at him. His hair was messy, his eyes half-lidded and soft. "Hey!" I whispered back. We just looked at each other for a second, the quiet hanging between us. Not awkward, but tentative, like we were both waiting for the other to make the first move. "Sleep okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, barely above a whisper. "You?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah." Another pause. Then, more carefully, "You good?" I nodded. "Are you?" Adam let out a soft breath and sat up, leaning back on one elbow. The blanket slipped down his chest, revealing the curve of his shoulder and the edge of a tattoo I hadn't noticed before. He looked down at me, studying my face. "I didn't plan for that to happen," he said, "but I'm not freaking out, if that's what you're worried about." I bit my lip. I wasn't sure. He reached out, brushing a hand through his hair. "I've been thinking about you for a while now. I didn't know how to say it." "Same," I admitted. His smile was soft, like he was relieved to hear that. Then his expression shifted. "What about Jason?" That was the part we hadn't talked about. The part that made everything more complicated. "He doesn't know," I said. "I figured. I don't even know if he suspects anything." Adam looked thoughtful for a second. "Would it be bad if he did?" I sat up now, too, blanket still pulled around me. "I don't know. I mean, he's my best friend. And you're his brother." He gave a small, knowing smile. "Yeah. Definitely not the most casual situation. But I don't regret it," I said quickly. That made him pause. He turned fully toward me, his eyes searching mine. "You sure?" I nodded. "I've liked you for a long time. I just didn't think it was ever going to be mutual." "It didn't start out that way," he admitted. "But over the last year, whenever I'd come home on breaks and you were around, I caught myself watching you more, noticing things." "Like what?" I asked, surprised. He smiled again, this time a little sheepish. "Like how you chew the side of your lip when you're concentrating? Or how you sit with your legs tucked up when you're watching TV? Little stuff." My chest squeezed in, that stupid, happy, terrified kind of way. "You noticed that?" "I noticed you," he said. We sat there for another minute, close but not touching now, both of us trying to figure out what this new reality meant. Then came the sound we both dreaded, the front door unlocking. "Jason." We shot each other a look. Adam got up fast, grabbing a hoodie and tossing it over his head. "Don't worry. I'll head out the back. Just play it cool, yeah?" I nodded, my heart thudding. Before he left, he paused at the door, looked over his shoulder and said, "This isn't over." I nodded again, and this time I couldn't stop the smile from creeping across my face. Then he was gone. Moments later, Jason's voice called from downstairs. "Yo, you up?" I cleared my throat, scrambling to make the bed look like it hadn't just hosted the most confusing, intense, amazing night of my life. "Yeah," I called back, just getting dressed. Breakfast with Jason felt like a high-stakes game of poker. He was completely normal, rambling about some new horror movie trailer, chewing through a giant bowl of cereal like nothing was weird, but I couldn't relax. Not when I still felt Adam's breath on my neck, Not when I could still smell his cologne faintly on my shirt. "Did you sleep okay?" Jason asked between spoonfuls. I nodded quickly. "Yeah, all good." He squinted at me. "You look tired." "Stayed up late," I said. Not technically a lie. Jason went back to his cereal, unfazed, and I let out a slow breath. So far, so good. Adam didn't come downstairs at all that morning. Jason didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he just figured his brother was out doing whatever older brothers do. But I knew better. I knew he was avoiding being in the same room as both of us. Can't blame him, I guess. By noon, Jason and I had settled into our usual rhythm. Video games, leftover pizza, and pointless arguing over movie rankings. It helped. For a while, I almost forgot how my whole internal world had shifted overnight. But the weight of it never really left. Every time Jason handed me a controller or shouted at the screen, I felt this little sting of guilt. And every time I glanced toward the stairs, part of me expected Adam to be there, watching, waiting, saying nothing. He didn't come down until late afternoon. I was in the kitchen grabbing water when I heard footsteps. I turned, and there he was, freshly showered, wearing athletic shorts and a loose t-shirt that clung to his chest just enough to make me remember everything. "Hey," he said. His voice was casual, calm, like we were just roommates bumping into each other at the fridge, like he hadn't kissed me breathless 10 hours ago. "Hey," I said back, unsure of what tone to use. He opened the fridge, grabbed something, and turned to me. "You good?" I nodded slowly. "Cool," he said, then added more softly, "We'll talk later." Then he walked out of the kitchen and into the backyard, bottle of water in hand, just like that. We didn't talk until after Jason passed out again, this time on the living room floor, snoring with a half-eaten bag of chips on his chest. I tiptoed around him, careful not to wake him, and headed back to the guest room. I didn't even have time to close the door before Adam appeared. "Hey," he said, voice quiet, eyes serious. He slipped into the room, closing the door behind him without waiting for an answer. We stood there for a moment, neither of us sure how to start. Then he stepped forward, took my face in both hands, and kissed me again. Deeper this time, less hesitant. When he pulled back, he didn't let go. Just rested his forehead against mine and whispered, "I've been thinking about that all day." "Me too," I said, barely breathing. He finally sat down, pulling me beside him onto the bed. This time, there was no rush, no panic. Just the slow settling of something we both wanted but weren't sure how to name yet. "I wasn't planning on staying in town all summer," he admitted. But now, he looked at me, eyes searching. "Now I kind of want to." I swallowed. "Because of this?" "Because of you." I didn't know what to say. I just leaned into him, letting the weight of the day slide off my shoulders. "We have to be careful," I said eventually. "I know. Jason can't find out." "I get it. But I don't want to stop," I said. His hand found mine under the blanket, fingers lacing with mine. "Good," he said. "Because I'm not stopping either." The thing about secrets is, they get heavy fast. For the first few days, we were careful, cautious. Adam would sneak into my room late at night, and we'd lie there in the dark, whispering quietly, hands exploring under the covers like two people who knew this couldn't last, but didn't care. We kept it simple. No labels, no promises, just whatever this was, whatever it needed to be. But soon, we got sloppy. It started with looks, lingering ones across the room. Glances that lasted just a second too long. Jason wasn't the most observant guy in the world, but I caught him frowning once or twice when he noticed Adam and I talking too closely in the kitchen, or brushing past each other in the hallway. Then came the near misses. One night, Adam and I were in the backyard. Jason had gone out for a beer run, and we figured we had time. We weren't even doing anything that risky. Just sitting in two lawn chairs, close but not touching, sipping soda and talking about music. But then Adam leaned over and said, low in my ear, You ever think about what would have happened if I'd kissed you years ago? And I froze. Not because of what he said, but because Jason's car was already turning into the driveway. We scrambled apart, Adam standing so fast he knocked over his can. I pretended to be adjusting the fire pit we hadn't even lit. Jason stepped into the backyard and looked between us. "What's up?" he asked, eyeing the scene. "Just chillin'," Adam said smoothly, grabbing the can off the ground like it was all part of the plan. Jason nodded, but something in his expression shifted. A flicker of suspicion, maybe. Or maybe I was just being paranoid. Either way, it stuck with me. Later that night, back in bed, Adam ran his hand down my side and whispered, "We should probably slow down." I turned toward him in the dark. "Do you want to?" "No," he admitted. "But we might have to," I sighed, resting my head against his shoulder. "We're going to get caught." "Maybe," he said. "But until then." And then he kissed me again. Slow. Lazy. Like we had all the time in the world. The next afternoon, it finally happened. Jason was downstairs, gaming with his headset on, so I slipped upstairs to grab my charger from Adam's room. His door was open, and I figured it was fine. He wasn't home. Or so I thought. I found the charger near his bed and bent down to grab it, just as Adam walked in, sweaty from a run, shirt clinging to his chest, breathing heavy. "You trying to snoop again?" he teased, stepping in and closing the door behind him. "I was grabbing my charger," I said, holding it up. He smirked. "Sure you were." Then he walked over, wrapped his arms around me from behind, and kissed the back of my neck. It should have stopped there, but it didn't. Because suddenly we were kissing, backing toward the bed, the charger dropping from my hand, our lips colliding with too much heat and too little sense. My back hit the mattress, his hand slipped under my shirt, and just as I felt the tension coil tight in my chest, the door creaked. We both froze. Jason's voice followed, casual, but way too close. "Yo, Adam, you seen?" The door didn't open all the way, just a crack, but enough to send us scrambling. Adam leapt up, grabbing his gym bag and tossing it in front of us like it had always been there. I sat up fast, pulling my shirt down and grabbing the charger like it was the only thing that mattered. Jason stepped inside fully, then stopped. He looked at us, me sitting on the edge of the bed, out of breath. Adam sweaty, flushed, standing too stiffly with his arms crossed. "What's going on?" Jason asked, his eyes narrowing slightly. Adam shrugged. "He was just grabbing his charger. Why?" Jason didn't answer. He looked between us again. Too long. Then he muttered, "Whatever," and walked out. The moment the door closed, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Adam sat beside me, running a hand through his hair. "We're freaking idiots," he said. Yup, we didn't laugh. Not this time. Because it was starting to hit us. This wasn't just messing around anymore. It was becoming real. After the close call in Adam's room, things changed. Not in some dramatic, explosive way, but in the quiet, creeping kind of way you don't notice until it's too late. We stopped sneaking around as much. We were careful, again, polite in front of Jason, casual. We kept our distance even when we didn't want to. But at night, when the lights were out and the house was still, Adam would show up at my door, always with the same knock, soft, barely there. And every time I opened the door, he'd give me that same look, like he was scared and excited at the same time. Like being with me was something he couldn't stop doing, even if he wanted to. I didn't realize how deep I was in it until one night he didn't come. I waited. I stared at the ceiling. I kept my phone nearby, checking it every 10 minutes even though I hadn't saved his number. He didn't text, didn't call, nothing. The next morning, he acted like everything was normal, like it was just a random Tuesday, like he hadn't left me up all night wondering if I'd done something wrong. And that's when I knew I wasn't just messing around anymore. I cared, way too much. It took another few days before we finally talked about it. It was late, again. Jason had gone to bed early, and I was sitting on the back porch, nursing a can of soda, and trying not to overthink every glance Adam had or hadn't given me that day. He showed up quietly, sliding the door open and stepping outside like he'd been looking for me. "Hey," he said. I didn't answer. He sat beside me on the porch step. The night was warm, the air thick with silence. "I didn't come the other night," he said, "because I knew if I did, I'd say something I wasn't ready to say." That got my attention. I turned to him, my chest already tightening. "What do you mean?" He looked down at his hands, then back up at me. "I think about you, like all the time, not just when we're messing around. I think about you when I'm making coffee, or folding laundry, or sitting in the living room pretending to listen to Jason talk about some dumb game." I didn't know what to say. My throat closed up. "I don't want this to be just something we regret later," he said, his voice quiet now. "I want more." "Adam," I started, but he cut me off gently. "I know it's complicated. I know it's risky. But I also know I haven't felt like this about anyone. Not in years. Maybe ever." I looked at him, trying to read the expression on his face. It wasn't lust. It wasn't heat. It was something deeper, something slower, something terrifying. "You mean that?" I asked. He nodded. Every word. The soda in my hand was forgotten. My heartbeat felt like it was rattling the porch beneath us. I leaned over, just a little, and kissed him. Not like before. Not frantic, not desperate. Just a slow, steady kiss that said, "I hear you. I feel it too." When we pulled apart, Adam exhaled. "So now what?" I laughed, but it came out nervous. "Now we figure out how to not blow up your relationship with your brother," he smiled. Minor detail, but we both knew it wasn't minor. Because now, it wasn't just physical. We'd crossed into something else. Something real. And once you cross that line, there's no going back. It happened on a Sunday. The house was quiet. Jason had gone to visit his girlfriend's family, and for the first time in a while, it was just me and Adam. No pretending, no sneaking, just us. We spent the whole day together. No rushing to cover our tracks, no glancing over our shoulders, just slow, easy time, making lunch together, watching some terrible Netflix documentary we didn't really pay attention to, sitting on opposite ends of the couch, but our legs tangled together in the middle. It felt good. Real. Around sunset, we moved to the porch. Adam leaned against the railing, sipping a beer. I sat on the step, looking up at him. "You ever think about what happens when the summer ends?" I asked. He nodded, slow. "All the time." "And?" He glanced down at me. "I want to try. I don't want this to be just a summer thing." I felt something warm bloom in my chest. "Me neither." He came and sat beside me, pulled me close. And for a while, we just sat there in silence, listening to the cicadas and the far-off hum of traffic. And that's when the front door opened. We both looked up. Too late. Jason was standing there, a half-empty water bottle in his hand, brow furrowed. His eyes flicked to me, then to Adam's arm around my shoulders. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I forgot my charger," he said, voice flat. Nobody moved. "You guys?" he started, then stopped. Adam stood up slowly, hands raised slightly like he didn't want to spook him. "Jay." "Don't." Jason cut him off, his voice sharp. "How long?" I stood too, guilt crawling up my spine. It wasn't supposed to be. "How long?" he repeated, eyes locked on mine now. Adam answered. "A few weeks." Jason let out a humorless laugh, running a hand through his hair. "Wow." "I didn't mean to lie," I said. "But you did." He shot back. Silence again. Then he looked at Adam, something wounded in his expression. "You're my brother. He's my best friend. What the hell were you thinking?" "I was thinking I like him." Adam said simply. Jason stared at us, jaw tight, then turned and walked back inside without another word. The door shut behind him. And just like that, the moment shattered. The next few days were tense. Jason didn't talk to either of us. Not really. He wasn't cruel, but he wasn't warm either. Just distant, polite, detached. It hurt more than if he'd screamed. I gave him space. So did Adam. It was like we were all waiting for something to snap. Finally, on the third night, I found Jason in the garage, fiddling with an old toolbox, pretending like he didn't hear me walk in. "Hey," I said. He didn't look up. "Look, I know you're pissed, and you have every right to be. I didn't plan for this to happen." "No one plans to fall for someone's brother," he said, still not looking at me. "But I did. I fell for him." Jason sighed, set the wrench down, and finally met my eyes. "Yeah," he said. "I know." That caught me off guard. "You do?" "I see the way you look at him, and the way he looks at you. You're not subtle, man." I didn't know what to say to that. Jason rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm not gonna lie, it's weird. But it's not like you're just hooking up. It's something, right?" "Yeah," I said. "It is." He nodded slowly, then picked the wrench back up. "Just if he hurts you, I get to punch him in the face." I laughed, relief hitting me like a wave. Deal. The rest of the summer wasn't perfect, but it got better. Jason warmed up. Slowly, Adam and I stopped hiding. We didn't flaunt it, but we didn't have to lie anymore either. And when August came, and it was time for me to head home, Adam packed a bag. "I'm coming with you," he said. And he did. We didn't know where we were headed. Not really. But we knew what we had was real, and for once, that was enough.